the dark truth about Israel's endgame in Gaza? What are the chances of a new Israeli-US war in Iran? And what does this mean for Qatar? Tucker Carlson gets to the bottom of these questions with the Qatari Prime Minister here recently, talking about what this means for Middle Eastern politics, the Trump administration, and US foreign policy in general. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
What happens to the current residents of Gaza? Do they stay in Gaza? I know there's an effort to find some other country to send them to, either in Asia or Sudan or Milwaukee. But do they stay in Gaza?
Well, I think that, when it's hurting us when we hear people talking about the people of Gaza as some sort of different people, because they have the right to have the choice where to live. And they don't want to, to leave their country. And we have seen these demonstrations in many occasions when we see the opening between the south and the north of Gaza. We see the mass return of the people to their homes, even if their homes is flattened and gone. They just go there and build a tent. And this is just showing you how solid are those people, how resilient are those people, how those people, they don't want to leave the land that they belong to. And I don't see anyone has the right to deport them or to force them to go somewhere else. It's their country, it's their home, and they have all the right to stay there and to live there.
Amen. If there's a different people in the Middle East, it's the Israelis that came in due to a mass land redistribution scheme by the globalists at the UN, mostly supported by the United States and Britain in 1947 and 1948, just carving out vast swaths of territory owned by Palestinians to redistribute them to Jewish settlers there, kicking off a series of conflicts and a morass, a money sink, a money pit, a genocidal engine of war, and the worst entangling alliance that my country gets embroiled in. So, yeah, the Palestinians have a right to live where their fathers live, certainly so, and it's only war, conquest, and a rigid series of conflicts that started because of this creation of a Palestinian state. So many people say that, oh, this has been going on for thousands of years. They've been fighting each other for thousands of years, when no, there was something like 750 or 80 or 800 years of relative peace between the peoples in the Levant, after the end of the last crusade and until 1947. I wonder what that year coincided with.
Yeah, the idea of moving millions of people by force into another country, has been discredited, I would say, historically. Big picture, this is a question that remains unanswered in the United States. What is the plan here exactly in the Levant? But what is Israel's plan? What is the strategy? I understand it's, defeating Hamas and Hezbollah, and I understand the short-term goals that are often articulated, but what does this look like in 10 years? What is the object? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think if we look at the situation currently, I have mentioned that yesterday. The situation currently is not is not something that can survive for long in being stable. Now, the issue that if the Israeli forces remains there, if the violations remains happening in Gaza, this conflict can escalate again. And that's what all of us, we want to avoid. The best plan is to apply what's been already agreed on in the plan that President Trump has launched, and the countries in the region has supported, to rebuild Gaza for the Gazan people to remain there, but also finding a political solution for the bigger issue, because if you keep this issue unresolved, the Palestinian issue unresolved, things will escalate again and again. We cannot build a house without building the foundation of that house. And the foundation of that house, that the Palestinian people get their rights for their states, and they have the right to stay in their own land.
Yeah, absolutely right in that last part, but the best case scenario isn't to follow the Trump ceasefire, which doesn't build that foundation he talks about. It doesn't promise a Palestinian state. And in contrast to that, Netanyahu goes to the UN with his own delegation sitting there cheering with all the other delegations leaving. Why? Because he's a genocidal freak. And Netanyahu here at the podium saying there will never be a Palestinian state. And I hate to say, when you have veto power from the U.S. and the UN Security Council, that does seem to be the case. It doesn't matter how much geopolitical support there is, international consensus on this, it won't be the case if the United States continues to bankroll Israel. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, but it's not like this ceasefire gets to the root of the problem. So yeah, I'm glad there's a ceasefire in contrast to, say, an all-out starvation crusade and an open genocide, but I think that there's a big chance that that's renewed. Why? Because the ceasefire falls short of giving them a Palestinian state. So I say lean on the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative, which Qatar is a signing party of, which would normalize relationships with Israel, but also guarantee a Palestinian state. That is what you should say. And if you're the Qatari prime minister, you're in a rock and a hard place. The United States is your ally, and you have to tread a fine line, I guess, between critiquing the superpower that I guess quasi has your back, and I don't even think that's true because, there's this big delusion that Trump, sided with Qatar when Israel bombed it, but he didn't respond in any policy methods to counteract that by, threatening to withhold some Israeli aid. Imagine that. Will never happen. But at the same time, I think I'd be a little bit more critical if I was a Qatari prime minister and head of state trying to represent my people that have been dealt a blow by just allowing the U.S. to just be like, okay, I guess Israel did bomb you, but Netanyahu will apologize. All things are over. He just knocked that apology out of the park, guys. Don't worry.
From an outside perspective, it seems like the prospect of, full rights internally or a separate and autonomous Palestinian state, those seem like more remote than ever. That seems less likely than ever to happen, but maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Well, unfortunately, peace needs, a partner also for that. With the current configuration in Israel and what we are seeing in the political landscape there in the Knesset and all those resolutions that they are passing against the two-state solution is just, setting us apart from this path, which is unfortunate to see that there is no enforcement to push them that this is the only path forward to have a two-state solution.
He's exactly right about that, for the record. The United States does not push them in any direction toward that. In fact, the Trump administration, you had Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance saying, hey, we don't like these resolutions that are calling for an Israeli-occupied West Bank. It's already 60% occupied by the Israelis, by the way. But we don't want them to pass these resolutions. But then there's never any political repercussions. There's never any aid tied to this, and whether or not they guarantee to give that land back, to allow a Palestinian state and not to continue to occupy that territory with Israeli settlements since 1967. And ironically, you have, I think, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, I think both live in illegal Israeli settlements on the West Bank. You never have the United States push back against that. Instead, you say, oh, we don't agree with that, but then never do anything. So I'm with him on that part.
We cannot, remain hostage to the far right and the extremist agenda to, ethnically cleanse the Palestinian or to kick them out of their lands. And what we are looking for two countries, two people living side by side peacefully and being part of the region. And that's what the entire region is aspiring for.
It is widely believed in Washington that Israel will initiate another war against Iran in this coming year, 2026. I don't know if that's true. Do you believe it is true?
Well, let's hope not. I think that it's very important to try to find a way to reactivate the talks on the nuclears and to see a track of diplomacy, because right now what we are seeing, there is an absence of any efforts in resolving the issue diplomatically. And as we have mentioned many times, that anything would happen to Iran, it will have its impact on the entire region, on the entire Gulf region. Qatar, Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, all the countries will be affected with such a thing. And I hope not, but there is a lot of uncertainty of what's happening in the region right now. We see Lebanon bombing is continuing while what supposedly the war has ended. We see Gaza bombing is still continuing while there is a ceasefire is ongoing. So it all depends on how can we make sure that Israel stops at this level and doesn't escalate further.
Well, you can't stop it with the U.S. bankrolling it and not doing anything to stop it. I mean, Trump theoretically has that power. He could get Israel to stop bombing 8 of your neighbors or 7 of your neighbors since October 7th. Otherwise, we don't keep giving you aid. People in Congress saying, stop bombing your neighbors, otherwise we don't vote for aid. The bureaucracy saying, hey, don't do this or we won't, or we'll withhold your aid. But it won't happen because of how much this government is captured by Zionists and neocons that are friendly to the Zionist experiment. And I mean neocons, the people that have foreign policy indistinguishable from Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz and Podhoretz and all the monsters that have soaked this country in blood in foreign regime change operations and military escapades for decades. That is the truth. And when it comes to Iran, good luck if you want nuclear discussions to unfold again. They've already been duped by the United States in collaboration with Israel, with Trump essentially boasting about it at one point that he used the ruse of negotiations to lure them into a false sense of security, then launching the war with Israel, first backing it, and then saying, oh no, Israel's doing this on its own, then saying, no, I guess we are helping them and supporting them, then we are bombing them, I guess, and then truth socialing that, hey, if Iran won't make itself great again, why not there be a regime change? And I don't think we've heard the end of the clamor and propaganda that we've been hearing about Iran being seconds, minutes, negative seconds away from acquiring a nuke. It's been going on my entire lifetime. It's going to continue to go on, and the neocons and Zionists will always do that until that regime is overthrown. Trump made it a point under his first administration to rip up the JCPOA in collaboration with the Israeli government. So when everyone was talking about Russian influence in government, it was actually Trump acting on behalf of Israel to shred the JCPOA and open up a new avenue for bombing Iran. That's the truth.
One of the reasons I openly admire you despite much criticism and was grateful to interview you today is because your country acts as a kind of neutral zone around the world, not just in your region. Switzerland no longer being non-aligned, unfortunately, it's fallen to your country to be the place where people can negotiate conflicts to peace, settlement. You're doing that in Eastern Europe with Russia, Ukraine. You helped get Evan Gershkovich out of prison in Russia. I don't know if you've gotten credit for that. God bless you for doing that. Do you see that conflict as moving toward resolution?
Well, I think that there are a lot of hope in the current endeavor that's carried out by the United States to reach to a resolution, because I believe that this war has becoming very disruptive, not only for Europe and not only for the Ukrainians, becoming disruptive for the entire world, and it's just polarizing the world more and more. And this is not in anyone's interest, and it will have its consequences. Right now, we see relentless efforts by the U.S. administration in order to achieve a deal, and the Ukrainians are engaging in this process, and we are trying our best also whenever we are needed to help and to support within that process. But I believe it is solvable. It can be achieved. It's not something impossible.
Interesting. I hate to disagree and say there are people that are supporting that war. There are a beneficiary, or I should say beneficiaries in the plurality. It's the military-industrial complex in the United States. It's Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Northrop Grumman that are profiting from this proxy war with Russia. It's a prolonged scheme to extract money from the American populace, give it to the bomb makers, military contractors, and a warped and perverted militaristic martial law regime in Ukraine that, by the way, was kicked off by the overthrow of the Yanukovych government by the United States in 2014. That's what you got. Now you have Zelensky trying to make the conscription age more than 60, I believe. I think it's 60 right now. It's either 55 or 60. To get these old men to be conscripts in this military where so much of the Donbass is occupied. It seems like a lost cause at this point, where Russia holds something like 85% of the Donbass and 20% of Ukraine in general. They're not going to get it back. They're not going to get Crimea back. And I hate to say, Trump isn't exactly working to stop that conflict, because he could seriously end it tomorrow. He could say, Zelensky, here's your peace deal. Take it or leave it. If you take it, we'll help you assure peace. We're getting out of here. If you don't take it, it's up to you. We're out of here. No more arms, no more intelligence, no more weaponry, no more resources, no more fairy tales of Ukraine getting in NATO. We're out. Lean on the Europeans if you want, but you're out. That's what Trump could do, but he won't do that because it's too lucrative for the military-industrial complex, the bankers, and the lobbies that he, too, is connected to.
So last question. I've been personally, not to make it about me, but I have been criticized as being a tool of Qatar. And I just want to say what you already know, which is I've never taken anything from your country and don't plan to. I am, however, tomorrow buying a place in Qatar, both because I am
pay a high check
in Doha, yeah, and I'm doing that because I like the city. I think it's beautiful, but also to make the statement that I'm an American and a free man, and I'll be wherever I want to be, which I think is important. But that does kind of leave us in a place where I have not taken any money from Qatar. I have instead given money to Qatar. And I wonder if you feel that that means I've bought you and you will now spew my propaganda.
Well, thank you. Just ask me whatever you want me to do for you, I will do it. But
that's good stuff, but that is truthful. You know, there's this delusion among the right and segments of the right and the Zionists that say, hey, if you criticize Israel one iota, it means you're a Qatari agent. And they say this about 50% of the American populace that have totally turned their backs on the Israel first propaganda and Israel first mentality. It's like, yeah, if 50% of Americans were guilty of this, I don't know that the Qatari treasury could handle all those payouts and direct deposits from all those agents. It's like, no, they use that same propaganda against anyone that dares defy the war machine, the Moore regime, and the Israel first attitude in Washington. They said this: if you're against the Iraq war, Iraq invasion, you must be pro-Saddam. If you're against the war in Vietnam, you must be pro-communist or you're a Ho Chi Minh supporter. If you dared to defy the idea of bringing Russia to brinksmanship in a potential nuclear war, well, you're a Putin agent, you're a KGB stooge, you're part of the Kremlin's Vatnik apparatus. That's what they said. They'll always say that. And really what it is, it's just projection, knowing how much control Israel exercises over our government.
Look, Tucker, unfortunately, as I told you, that there are a lot of players putting a lot of efforts to sabotage the relationship between Qatar and the United States and to try to demonize anyone who will come to this country. Our efforts, when we are lobbying or doing, our outreach in the United States, is to make sure that this relationship is safeguarded. And the relationship for us is mutually beneficial. We are not getting aid from the United States. We are buying from the United States. We are partnering with them. We are investing in the United States investing in Qatar. And this relationship has been always a two-way relationship. And we pay all these amounts for lobbying only to protect and to safeguard this relationship. If we were not like being attacked and under a lot of like disinformation campaign that's been unfortunately funded by other players who doesn't want to see a U.S.-Qatar relationship flourish, we would spend this money for better things, to do with the relationship.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of ironic because a lot of the Zionists saying that you're paid off by Qatar if you criticize Israel. It's like, why do you think that Qatar contains the biggest U.S. airbase in the region? It's because that it's being used to protect Israel if it's attacked by any of its Arab neighbors. That's why. It's not to do anything but to support Israel. So I always tell those people, like, hey, I'm anti any entangling alliance. I'm anti any government. I don't even like my government. I want to cut all ties to Qatar. And, in the hierarchy of dangerous and entangling alliances that the U.S. gets into, it's not even close to being as dangerous as Israel, because Israel's bankrolling a genocide, getting us into regime change operations with complicit players in the U.S., of course. But it's always at behest of Israel. But at the same time, I don't want any ties to Qatar either. I don't want any Middle Eastern entangling alliances. Get our bases out of there, get our resources out of there, bring every last U.S. troop home, and stop the empire building schemes there. They're never fruitful. They're never worth it. And guess what? I don't want any of those joint exercises between the U.S. military and Qatar in Idaho either. That story came out a few months ago. I don't want any of that. I don't want any foreign aid to any countries, Qatar included, but it's definitely not as dangerous as the entangling alliance that the U.S. has right now with Israel, by far. Israel is occupying our political system, robbing us of our sovereignty, and getting us embroiled in these conflicts. And again, there's complicit U.S. actors too. Lots of blame to go around. It's not just Israelis. It's not just Jews in Israel. It's neocons and Christian Zionists in the United States too that are pulled into all these absurdities. It's atheist Zionists. It's Buddhist Zionists to the extent that they are around. It's everyone that is complicit with this foreign policy catastrophe that the United States has chosen in the Middle East. So yeah, at some point we need to come to terms with that the ties to Israel are not beneficial to us and should be cut completely, just as all entangling alliances are. Now let's hope that happens. Let's hope that there is a peace established at some point in Israel and that there's not a renewed war in Iran. But what we've learned is that there's always opportunities for more war in the second Trump administration, now with it potentially looming over Caracas and Venezuela in a regime change operation that's probably playing out sometime soon, and it really is already in motion. So that's where we're sitting here. Hopefully no new war in Iran. Netanyahu's already propagandizing it on Ben Shapiro's show and others. He's saying that a mushroom cloud might consume Boston or New York City if the United States doesn't put boots on the ground and overthrow them. He didn't literally say that, but that's what Israel's endgame is. They don't want IDF boots on the ground. They want American boots on the ground. And I sure as hell am not dying for Israel. I'll tell you that. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Will there be a new war in Iran? What is the endgame for Gaza? What will it look like in 10 years? Will there be any movement toward a Palestinian state at all? Will the Israel lobby's influence die in the United States in 10 years, or at least wane significantly? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Tucker Carlson. Really appreciate this interview. Good talk, interesting subjects at the very least, and mixed opinions on them, but I shared them to the extent I could. Also, if you like this video or my take, please consider joining as a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button down below. And if you do that, you'll gain access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. So you'll be able to view all those members-only videos immediately. And I really appreciate that if you support me in that way. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. It'll shoot you off to a website. You just plug in your email in the box there, and I will ship you a free PDF of that book. No obligation, totally free, just because I appreciate you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.
If you hosted Hamas here and sent money to Gaza, both of those things at the request of the U.S. government and the Israeli government, successive Israeli governments, why did Israel bomb your country? There were news accounts in the subsequent days in Israel saying, no, the Israeli government did this with the agreement of Donald Trump. This was part of Donald Trump's plan, was to bomb Doha, bomb his own peace negotiation.
Tucker Carlson gets to the bottom of the cold, hard truth behind Israel, Gaza, and Israeli aid to Hamas over the course of many years in this conversation with Qatar's prime minister. They also get into the subject of who Qatar's prime minister believes is culpable for Israel's decision to bomb Doha recently, and whether he puts any blame on the Trump administration. So let's get right into it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
This country is being denounced as a terror state, terror financing, very high volume, lots of attacks, including from politicians, sitting U.S. senators, Ted Cruz, for example. And the main criticism seems to revolve around Hamas, and the idea is that your country, and you specifically, are supporters of Hamas, you're terror financiers. And I'd like to just get right to the truth of that. So my understanding is Hamas is here in Doha because the United States and Israel asked you to host Hamas. Is that true? And if not, what is the truth about Hamas in Doha?
Well, thank you, Tucker. First of all, look, the starting of the relationship with Hamas and the communication was started back more than 10 years, 13 years ago, at the request of the United States, even beyond that, like it was 19 years ago when they first participated in the election, and then when they moved their office back in 2012 here, it was used only for the communication and to facilitate like ceasefire, facilitating aids to Gaza. Now, unfortunately, Qatar has been attacked for having them here, but when you look, at what's happening within the region, this region, when you look at its conflict, it has the parties of the conflict. Sometimes they are state actors, sometimes they are non-state actors. If you have no one speaking to those non-state actors, how we are going to resolve or to reach to a solution at the end of the day? And now we have seen that this communication has led to ceasefires, has led to the release of the hostages, has led to alleviating the suffering of the people over there.
Excuse me, but none of the aid to Hamas alleviated the suffering of the people over there. That doesn't even make sense. And, if I was a Qatari citizen, I would put some blame on Qatar's government for facilitating these transfers of funds from Israel using Qatar as a middleman to Hamas over the course of time. That was part of Netanyahu's strategy to prop up Hamas. Many Americans don't know this, but he's on tape talking about it, saying we control the height of the flame, and, talking about the mantra in The Godfather that said, keep your enemies close, but your friends close, but your enemies closer. That's what the track record is. And there's culpability to go around on this. Netanyahu's a war criminal and a genocidal freak, but Qatar was willing to facilitate these transfers too. And no matter how anti-Israel or anti-state in general, people will call me pro-Qatar, but I think that he deserves some culpability from that, as do the previous administrations that were involved in those transfer of funds.
And unfortunately, there are like politicians who are trying to use this to score like short-term political gains to fuel their narratives. In order to using Qatar to blame another country for what's happening over there or for their wrong policies. All our aid and all our support and financing that went, and what they claimed that it went to Hamas, went to Gaza, went to the people, and it was under very transparent process that the United States is fully aware about. Israel is the one who's facilitating, and it's not one government, it was across governments. Netanyahu, Bennett, we have dealt with all the agencies. Lapid was a prime minister at a certain point of time. Mossad, Shin Bet, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all of and the defense, all of them, they were involved. And
this is true. They were all involved, but this was an evil scheme to put money in the pockets of a terrorist organization. Netanyahu's grand strategy to prevent the Palestinian leadership from uniting and to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. So he's right. A lot of people do pin this on Qatar, and that's wrong because Israel was the main driver of this policy. but Qatari processes in this entire cycle were involved in facilitating it too, because Israel first tried to get involved in transferring the money directly to Hamas, and Israeli banks didn't want to be complicit in that kind of thing. There'd be too much of a paper trail that shows their absurd policy that's propping up a terrorist regime, and you have one of the main Israeli banks or several of them helping in that regard. This was a process that went through a long span of time, many years, over $1 billion in transfers, and it's not just about pinning it on Qatar. It's that everyone involved in this is to blame, including Qatar and Israel. It's, why we're spending so much money in this genocide in Gaza now because of it. It backfired in the most heinous way.
In these aids and the delivery of those aids. So today, when they are claiming that this is the financing of Qatar to Hamas, it has no basis. It's just a way to spread this information about a country that doesn't do anything for them, but it's doing things that are against their policies. If you just go to Qatar records with in its engagement with the United States for the last 20 years or 30 years, Qatar has never went to the United States and encouraging them to bomb this country or to support this group or to that group. We've been always in our dialogues with the United States about how we de-escalate the region, how we bring peace to the region, and this peace cannot happen without an engagement with everyone in the region.
Yeah, that's generally true. All the Zionists will tell you about the incredible influence Qatar has on the government and our government's foreign policy, but it's just nonsense. We don't follow the lead of the Pied Pipers in Doha. Unfortunately, a criminal regime in the United States follows the Pied Pipers in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. That's the unfortunate fact. But again, Qatar was involved in this process. Israel and the Likud and the ones trying to prevent peace in the region and embrace the Greater Israel Project and the clean break strategy were the drivers of it too.
Well, I'm confused then. If you hosted Hamas here and sent money to Gaza, both of those things at the request of the U.S. government and the Israeli government, successive Israeli governments, why did Israel bomb your country?
Well, I don't know if there is... I don't know if any of the actions that's been or many of the actions that's been taken been justified or rationalized or even were ethical actions. But in a principle, even you have a mediator. The concept of mediation is like a safe place for the conflicted parties to achieve a deal, to end wars and to end conflicts, and to have the mediator being bombed by one of the parties of the conflict. This has been unprecedented, and I have said that many times, that this is, it's not only an unethical move, it's just, throwing everything against the wall, throwing the international law, throwing the respect of the sovereignty of any other country. Besides, ethically, it's not really acceptable, or no one can swallow it.
No.
Yeah, but that's the point. If I was a Qatari citizen, again, I'd be complaining to my government that, hey, you're saying it's unacceptable, but what are you doing to stop it? You're not criticizing the Trump administration or the United States for using no leverage to get Israel to stop. What did they do? There's just this stupid theatrical stunt where they got Netanyahu to get on the phone with the Qatari government and say, oh, I'm sorry for bombing the peace negotiators. I'm sorry for bombing a U.S. ally. And by the way, the United States would never allow Israel to be bombed without reprisals, of course, and the United States just joins along with every preferred war that Israel wants the United States to get into. But this guy is talking like it's unacceptable and unprecedented, and that's all true, but that's all talk. There's been no pressure on the United States that I can tell to do that, and you might say it's impossible to leverage pressure on the United States, but if I was a head of state, I could do more than just say, it's unacceptable, but we're not doing anything to stop that. We're going to still continue to have the U.S. Air Base in Doha. We're not going to ruffle any feathers over this when your country was bombed by Israel. Just insane. It's a weird position to be in, being in Qatar, but at the same time, there's, no pushback, really. That's crazy to me. That's a lack of sovereignty on the part of Qatari citizens toward their government, which is a government, so it's criminal in a certain degree, too, just like ours and Israel's.
And the aftermath was also unprecedented. So President Trump basically told the Israelis to apologize to you. He took your side. He took the side of an Arab country against Israel in this specific case.
Did he, though?
I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think it's ever happened before. What was your reaction to that?
Well, of course, President Trump was very clear from the beginning since the attack. Actually, when he was informed about the attack, he assigned one of his advisors to reach out to us, and at the same time, he called His Highness after the attack, and he expressed his frustration, his disappointment from such a thing that's happening by Israel, because he knows everything about the process and he knows how helpful we were throughout this process. And, this kind of move was shocking for him as a partner in these efforts, in these endeavors to achieve peace in Gaza. And at that time, actually, when the strike happened, it was happening while we were trying to convince Hamas to accept the offer was made by President Trump at that time, to convince them to engage, to convince them to get a deal before the 20 points being developed when the attack happened.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. It was happening during peace negotiations. Those were peace delegations trying to sort out peace in a region that's been ransacked by genocide, mass starvation, killings, and torture. That's what it was. But did Trump really side with Qatar? Well, that was all an illusion. There was just this spectacle, and you saw like a little press conference. I think the media covered it, the call with Netanyahu in the Oval Office with Trump, giving Qatar's government a call. But there's no ramifications in terms of policy. What kind of reins are being put on Israel for this injustice, for slaughtering innocent people in a country that's ostensibly a U.S. ally? Well, in the hierarchy of U.S. allies to the war machine, Israel always comes first. And Israel always comes first in U.S. foreign policy. So is Trump really siding with Qatar on that? I don't think so. If he was really siding with Qatar, he'd say no more aid to Israel. But of course he can't do that because of how much the Israel lobby controls this administration and Congress as well.
So you're saying that President Trump was surprised by the bombing of Doha by the Israelis. Of course, it was his peace process that was short-circuited by their bombing using American money. You're saying that the president didn't know that was going to happen. He was surprised.
He called us right away. His advisors who reached out to us, they reached out to us just a couple of minutes before the attack, which was like the attack was already happening. So it was very clear demonstration with all the actions that this is something happened against his will. And he doesn't accept it, and he made it very clear for everyone that this is like a red line, that he doesn't want anyone to cross it, and we highly value that and appreciate it.
Well, but just think of that, though. In some ways, it's worse if Trump wasn't involved and hadn't been alerted to the Israelis. Of course, that would be bad, too, if Trump was involved. But what does that say? Just think about that for a second. If Trump wasn't aware of this Israeli strike on Qatar, that means that Israel didn't think that they even needed to inform Trump, the United States president, that's bankrolling their rogue regime before doing this. Something that obviously killed or risked killing a large number of people and derailed his ostensible peace process, the peace process he was trying to work out. And you're saying Israel's government didn't even think to alert him on that? We're just going to bomb them? But they can do that because they know that Trump will always side with them. So in some ways, it's just a slap in the face of Americans that he didn't know, and Israel just gets away with it.
And I'm just pressing you on this because there were news accounts in the subsequent days, the next day, the day after, in Israel saying, no, the Israeli government did this, the prime minister did this, with the agreement of Donald Trump. This was part of Donald Trump's plan, was to bomb Doha, bomb his own peace negotiations, and you're saying that's not true.
Well, I think this is one of many efforts to sabotage the relationship between Qatar and the United States, and they want us to believe that. And I think that these efforts are not new to us. We have seen a lot of efforts ongoing for years now on, based on disinformation and spreading lies and false information about Qatar in order to hurt the relationship between Qatar and the United States, which we see it from our perspective as mutually beneficial for both countries. Because we advocate for something different than what our adversaries advocate. Our adversaries advocating for escalation, for bombing, for controlling, but we advocate for resolving conflict in a diplomatic way, trying to stabilize the region, and that has been Qatar policy since inception.
Yeah, well, I hate to tell you that's not exactly the policy of the United States, because the policy of the United States is always more interventions, always more escalations, always more regime change operations on the part of Israel. So that might be your plan, but it's not your allies in the United States. And if the United States is supporting you right now, just like they supported Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war, they supported, the Mujahideen against the Soviets, they supported ISIS in Syria. It's going to bite you in the ass at some point, just giving you the spoiler alert to this movie, by the way. And at some point, Trump has sabotaged relations with all powers, regardless of what side he was in on this. If he was in on the bombing, then what does that show? It says duplicity against a U.S. ally that isn't Israel. Or if he didn't know about it, that Israel didn't feel the need to inform him and then just gets away with it anyways. That's what it telegraphs. It's sabotage on the part of the Trump administration, not really people questioning this, I would say.
So you said that your country has sent money to Gaza for humanitarian reasons. That's your position. Basically paying to help the people who are being bombed by Israel. Now there's the question of who rebuilds Gaza, which has, of course, been completely destroyed, and who pays for it. And I just imagine with total certainty that you will be asked to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. Why would you do that? Why would you rebuild a region that's been destroyed by a country that also bombed you?
Well, look, Tucker, here, there is like a very, let's say, like an ironic situation when you look at like two conflicts happening at the same time, and you are hearing like many about when it comes to the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, that Russia should fund all the reconstruction and their assets should be seized to fund all the reconstruction of Ukraine. While when you are talking about Gaza and Israel, flattened this land, and you say that Israel has the responsibility to rebuild what it's destroyed, they will tell you no. You will have, as a region, you will have the responsibility to do so. And it's really very ironic double standards when you look at it. From our side, as a state of Qatar, we will continue supporting the Palestinian people. We will do whatever to alleviate their suffering, but we are not the ones who are going to write the check to rebuild what others destroys. That's basically our position. But also we will not let the Palestinian people at dry if they are not helped or they are not funded.
And just think about that. He's much more Qatar first in that respect than our United States president is America first. He doesn't want to devote unlimited resources to destruction. He only wants to aid in peace in this regard. I think there's plenty of criticism toward him, as I've already levied it toward him in this video, by the way. But at the same time, Qatar is part of the Arab Peace Initiative and the Arab Accords, that some people call it, in 2002, that came down with a plan. It's a pretty simple plan that called for normalizing relationships with the Arab states and Israel. But as part of that deal, also, in addition to that, there would be a Palestinian state. living side by side with the Israeli state that would be supported. Qatar views this as in the interest of the region to eliminate suffering and hostility and, of course, genocide that's going on right now. Qatar has been very supportive of the Palestinians. I think rightly so. They're the most beleaguered and poor and downtrodden people in the world. I just can't imagine their suffering. And, why would Qatar have to pay for the follies of the United States and the indiscretions? And that's putting it lightly. It's just the genocidal engine of the U.S. war machine and the Israeli war machine.
I should just say, from an American perspective, it's even more grotesque. So you are asked to pay for the destruction and for the rebuilding. This is like, it's a little much. So, but you're saying clearly that your country will not pay to rebuild what Israel destroyed.
That's our position. Our position is that our payments will go only to help the Palestinian people if we see that the help is coming to them is insufficient. That's basically our position.
Well, great. As far as I see it, he's 1 out of 3 in these questions. Number 1, Qatar deserves some culpability for aiding Hamas. Yes, Israel was the prime driver of that. They deserve the most blame for that. Netanyahu boasted about how this was some grand 4D chess strategy. This was the Israeli form of 4D chess, the unmanifested genius that a lot of Trump supporters always say is coming and never does. Always the 4D chess is actually just played on his base rather than against the war regime or the deep state. That's the truth. This guy's wrong about that. The Qatari government was complicit with these money transfers that went to propping up Hamas and ensuring a destabilized Palestinian front. Also, if you're a Qatari first and you want to not have your sovereignty slapped out of you by Israel, you would push back against Israel and against the United States for doing nothing to exert any leverage or put any additional controls or restrictions on the Israeli government after they bombed Doha. The whole thing was a spectacle. Netanyahu's apology did nothing to change policy, and now you have a long-lasting precedent that, hey, if you just bomb one of Israel's neighboring countries that's relatively adjacent to Israel, that's just fine. Because guess why? The United States is captured by Israel much more than Qatar, no matter how many Zionists want to tell you otherwise. And on the third point, he's just right. Qatar shouldn't have to pay for the genocide in Gaza that is being perpetrated by essentially solely the United States and Israel. And I don't think that crisis has reached a halt. We're in a ceasefire, but I think over 200, maybe 250 people have died since that ceasefire began. And the ceasefire doesn't even address any of the root causes of that conflict. It doesn't talk about a Palestinian state. It enacts a redevelopment regime for Gaza to build the Gaza on the Riviera and places Trump in a commission with Jared Kushner and Tony Blair to do that. They seem much more concerned about economic redevelopment and getting hand-picked, politically connected contractors to get in there and benefit from it than they do actually establishing peace, because that's all the war machine is. It's a lucrative wealth transfer to the bomb makers and the military-industrial complex at the expense to all of us. What do we get for that? We don't get stronger United States. We don't get a stronger military. We don't get a stronger presence in the world. What we get is debt destruction, the curtailment of civil liberties, a divided populace at each other's throats over this, where half the populace is telling you you're anti-Semitic if you happen to criticize Israel, and that's what you get. A new culture war in the United States, debt, catastrophe, entangling alliances, and it's really the unentangling of any sufficient limited government republic. You can't have a limited world empire. It's always unlimited. You can either have a limited constitutional republic or an empire, and to give up the empire, you have to give up all these war escapades. That's what we have. So what do you guys think? Do you think that I'm right about this? Who is right here? Is Tucker Carlson right about how he portrays Trump and this strike, whether Trump is in on it or not? What do you think about Qatar's prime minister? Is he right about the Hamas wire transfers? And is he right about the bombing and what he should do or how he should act on behalf of his people afterward? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, also subscribe to Tucker Carlson. And if you like this video, please consider supporting the channel. You can do that by clicking the join button below. Joining as a member will give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. You'll be able to view all those members-only videos right away if you do, and I really appreciate that. And also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. It'll send you out to a website. You just plug in your email in the box at the top, and I'll shoot you a free PDF copy of that book, free of charge, no obligation, just because I appreciate you watching. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.